All right, I think we're live. Giff and Rock, welcome. Giff, you want to take it over?
Yeah, hey, how's everybody doing? How are we all doing right now? I mean, it's a beautiful day. I think there's good innovation coming down the pipeline. I think there's some stirring of communities that are starting to gel together, and this is kind of, if Chiz is so polite, he let me kind of commandeer a little bit on this fine Friday night for me, and different days for different people around the world, but the whole point, I believe, for tonight is to kind of make this attempt to kind of bridge communities together who are speaking on similar topics, similar ideas. They want to experiment with similar things, but maybe haven't had a chance to really talk directly before. So tonight, we're talking, as always, about Eros and the Eros revival kind of momentum movement that we're trying to pull together. And this is very specific on bringing bot tokens over to Pulse Chain, right? Pairing up with liquidity, creating kind of these liquidity webs with a token like Eros, which was originally launched on Pulse Chain, that is a basically a copy paste of the Grays token, if you don't know. And this is a tax token. It's a reflection token, right? And so there's a lot of cool mechanics that are built into that was left for dead, and that's why we're calling it the revival, right? So we're talking that, and Rock, and I'm gonna let Rock talk a little bit about what he's been working on. But Rock is a Pulse Chain kind of diehard, right? He's been here from the beginning in Pulse Chain and never went anywhere, as far as I'm concerned. And he has been doing his own experiments, so to speak. And yes, he does. He was around in the early Giff days and Pulsar days and all the other tokens I was doing. So he can speak really well on some of the experiments that I've run on Pulse Chain. And now he's kind of, I'm not going to put any words in Rock's mouth, but he's working on some stuff, right? He's working on some ideas that he's trying to hash out. And I don't know. I would like Rock to maybe take over for just a minute and just kind of introduce yourself to some people who maybe have never heard of you before, and maybe just talk a little bit about what you're passionate about and what you're into right now.
So, yeah. So I'm a early, actually day one hex guy, right? I'm on Twitter, Rock Edison the Hexagon, right? So I've been around the community for ever, pretty much. And what I'm doing is basically trying to get my ideas that are based on a personal set of principles into usable crypto tech, basically, with whatever tools and availability that I have to do so. But right now, I have a suite of tokens launched on a launch pad that allows me to set parameters that I want to test out and launch without getting my head ripped off to do it. So I can do this fairly cheaply. I can do it quickly. It gives me a chance to observe what's going on, and it gives me a foundational set of knowledge to be able to drive through to potentially achieving the goals of my standards, my manifesto, so to speak. What is it that I would like to achieve from crypto? And how do I provide tools that I would use to do that, right? What are the pitfalls that I've seen throughout my experience? What are the pitfalls that we've all seen throughout, right? Yeah, I was early days Giff. I was able to get in on that token quite early. Giff and PGIF. I was minting PGIF through the contract before the GUI was written, right? So I was doing that and making use of the system, and I saw the effects of what happened there, and what the effect of large amounts of tokens early on by certain users, what does it do to everybody that comes after? That's what that's what I'm focusing on, trying to protect against, avoid, right. Keeping I told Giff earlier, keeping early supply out of the criminals' hands, basically.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so the idea of tax token with rewards is great. I don't mind paying taxes if there's an opportunity for rewards, but I don't want rewards on ever downward charts because it doesn't matter. You're underwater either way. Oh, I'm getting 10% on this, but I'm losing 30, whatever. So there's that. And focusing on how to maintain very healthy charts or healthy charts, but certainly trying to avoid unhealthy charts. And part of that is keeping early supply out of the hands of people who will just come to extract. And my entry into crypto was in the pursuit of yield income from the start. I purchased Bitcoin early in 2019 for the main purpose of getting into Hex. I would use that Bitcoin to free claim Hex and then see what Hex was about, right? Because Bitcoin obviously is a speculative asset, no yield, but my pursuit, my focus on managing my own capital is using it, putting it to work to provide income. So that's been my focus the whole time. That's where my thinking has been the whole time. And that's what I'm working with now, trying to figure out how I can maintain supply, manage supply, right? Manage tokenomics, manage liquidity, so that I can provide a safe place for people to come and do same, earn some form of yield income. That's it.
Nice.
That's a lot. But there you go.
Giff, do you have questions, or you want me to? I have questions.
Yeah, I want you to go. Go, Chiz.
I mean, first of all, I guess my question is: are you talking about like Pump Tires as like the platform that you can create tokens from? Is that what you're thinking, or something else?
Well, no, I launch my tokens through a launch pad. It's Axel DeFi's launch pad, right?
Oh, okay.
And the reason why I use that, I know the developer, trust him. I've been involved with his stuff since he started developing. So I know him and I trust him, and he has the parameters there that will allow me to set up this kind of, I call it a suite of tokens.
Right.
That will allow me to set up this suite of tokens that I can go in and I can learn as much as possible through different tokenomics. I've got 5 tokens launched and a 6th one on the way that will complete this suite of tokens.
Right.
And they all have different tokenomics. Right. I see different effects of launch. One of the nice things about, by the way, the Axel Launchpad is that you don't get sniping bots. He's got some anti-sniper settings in there. In fact, for the first hour of a launch, I think you can only buy like 50,000 pulse worth of tokens for the first hour of launch. I mean, there's some really cool stuff in there. And if you get a chance to see the charts that I have in the early hours of those charts, you'll see it in effect, right? So, yeah.
And what you're thinking on, because this is part of what was brought to us, this idea of aligned interests among token holders and incentivizing people that are committed to a healthy chart, but also not hurting others, and intentionally sort of figuring out how to do what you're saying, which is, you said, keep the early tokens and early supply out of criminals' hands, right? That's one thing, but it's also sort of in addition to that, how do you align owners, in a decentralized way and create freedom of, movement and exchange? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, first off, I mean, obviously, if my focus is on yield income, that doesn't happen without scraping yield, right? And
Right.
my thinking and my motto, first off, is celebrate people being able to do that. So that's why I want a system that I can use in that way, right? And as a designer, I'm a longtime designer, and as a designer, I design stuff I want to use, right? That's it. Design stuff to get rich, but I design things that I want to use that maybe
Okay.
doesn't exist, right? So, but it goes down to attraction. My thinking is take what you need, leave the rest, right? That is a communication that I will frequently make, but it is about attraction. What kind of users are you attracting, and how are you attracting them? This is a focus that has to be sorted out.
And what's your thinking about the real yield, the passive income? And I'm immediately thinking about Giff, because last time we were talking, you were saying there's this opportunity on Pulse Chain between the liquidity webs and the volatility there, and validating income, and there's all these sort of ways to generate income. So I guess my question to Rock and to Giff is, what are you thinking? Or Rock, actually, what are you thinking? What's your go-to yield generating strategy? Like, what do you think?
Well, let's just go back to the launch of Pulse Chain. Now, for a year, 2 years prior to the launch with testnets, I was operating in the farms on testnet for 2 years before launch. I knew exactly what was going on with those, how to use them, what were the effects of my moves, right? So that was an opportunity for me. Now, on launch, and I operated farms all the way up until, the yield was clipped. But obviously, managing impermanent loss, all of that kind of stuff. So probably I did take a turn into Titan X, but that didn't work out well for me. I staked a massive amount of Titan X, staked before, like 5 days before the announcement of Dragon X, white paper. 5 days before the white paper was launched, a massive amount, and that just wrecked me hard. So
many people got wrecked there, man, and so many people got wrecked is so wrong.
Yeah,
I didn't really
work.
understand. Well, not only that, I'm not a staker typically, just because I understand dilution, but I didn't think that was going to happen. Honestly, I was like sort of blown away. Anyway, okay, so yeah.
As soon as I saw the white paper, I knew it was going to happen. But the thing is, so then probably the next kind of place that I explored was Giff, PGIF at that point. That was working pretty well until it wasn't, but it was working great. And obviously we built up a lot of value over time. I got in pretty early to that. Now things kind of shift.
Well, what was it about PGIF and Giff that was working? Like, what was the magic in that you saw that were like, oh, that's good? Like, what was that?
Pretty simple. I could clearly see profitable moves to make. As long as you're providing users profitable moves to make, they will make them, right? And people will come to make more of them. And so that was the thing with PGIF was that there were profitable moves to be made, which if you're paying attention, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
And I was able to build up a nice bag of Pulse. Now I had a pretty good size chunk of Gift that I was just holding, and I kept it, and the idea was bringing Pulse into the system to buy Gift. burn it by minting Giff, converting that back into pulse and recycling that and continually growing that bag. And that worked really, really well as long as that spread kept open, the spread on the ratio. And so obviously there were some problems with some dumps on that, and that kind of, ended that for me. Now, kind of, I think I even dipped into the Titan-X farms, which was a mistake again. But I held out hope that there was innovation had there. I did think that the farms had a chance, but there was I guess there were just too many tokens to sell, to be honest. I feel
and there was no value in tank. It's just this inflationary yield.
Yeah.
That and all the inflationary yield, that's why it's like real yield, either whether or not it's coming from a fee or the ARB or something in the system that's like self-generating as opposed to this inflationary yield. Yeah.
Yeah. Currently, I've been kind of operating in the Web Chef stuff. I think there's potential there. I think things are still in flux with the developer and what he's developing and how he's managing launches and managing communication. I see a lot of issues with the charts on those since I've been involved with it. Again, there can be nice ROI, but I know he's trying to work towards consistency, but it hasn't gotten there yet, and either with charts or ROI. So
if I can throw out a really nerdy stat real quick, I'm just gonna nerd out for just a second on the Web Chef stuff that was going on. Every time that those big moves were being made, there was, correct me if I'm wrong, Rock, but there was hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of crypto being thrown around from one token to the next to try to revive like one thing. So it's all the volumes hitting Pulse Chain. And there was, in the early days, Pulse Chain gas would go insane, like 30 million, 90 million, Gwei, 120 million, Gwei. I can't remember what the massive amount was that I eventually found, but all these bots are, when you got an LP web, all these bots are moving, making the moves, right? They're just scripts, right? The scripts that people have written to find arbitrage and immediately grab that profit, whether it be 5 cents or $50, it doesn't matter. Just building profit, right? And an interesting thing that happened during that time point is that, and it's been happening again recently, is these validators are getting paid 5x over their typical yield. So if there is any real generation of value on Pulse Chain, it's either liquidity providing or it's validating, right?
Yeah.
So you could see it work in real time. Like there are times when the validators are being stressed and you can see it in the payouts. The payouts go up. I'm in other communities where they're running these like coins that represent validator coins, right? And they're getting paid extra yield and that sort of a thing too. So I'm just throwing this stuff out there because what I really wanted to bring together with you two guys is this idea of the LP webs and what does that really mean and how does it generate real yield, right? And how can we kind of harness that?
Yeah.
Well, I think in the case of what I'm doing, I'm exploring that through tax and rewards. And like I said, I can with this launcher, I can distribute rewards to various functions. I can distribute it to burn. I can distribute a percentage to LP. I can distribute obviously to rewards. Now with the Web Chef stuff, by the way, they about maybe 10 days ago, they were driving most of the Pulse Chain volume, like 30 million over 24 hours. That sustained for 5 or 6 days like that, right? I mean, just up, and I think it peaked at 38. So, but they're working through liquidity, through purchases, and obviously bot controls. how the distributors work. So those, all those things working together, they pull levers to kind of get things. Now, yes, money was shifting from one token to the next because people watching the ROI on these tokens. This one's shooting up. All of a sudden, people are like, oh, out of this one into this one, right? And another one shoots out of that one into this one. So these, we're all doing this. But what it ended up doing was it kind of ended up bringing all the charts all on a downward move. And I think that's what he's trying to figure out how to get out of, trying to get some kind of sustainability in the prices. Now, but again, for me right now, I'm just at the stage where I will launch the 6th token and then start managing liquidity. A big portion of what I do is really controlling supply in a manner that it can be released through liquidity at times where it makes sense, right? And but I have to set up my liquidity web once my last token is launched, and then start to see what are the effects of that. And at some point, I probably will likely have to bring in some sort of a bot structure to keep all of these things evened out across the ecosystem. So
there's two things that come to my mind, Giff, in hearing Rock. One is, I mean, I see Rock probably representing one of maybe 20 like community LP web building operations, right? Including Eros, right? You've got Eros, you've got Rocks, you got, all these things. And so that sort of thinks to me in terms of your thought, which was how do you, I mean, if you follow what you just said, which is money's real yield right now is in validation or in the LP web, in the volatility of, and then there's also in these fee tokens, I don't really like calling them tax tokens just because it doesn't feel like a tax to me. I think that's like a misnomer. And I think it's sort of like, it just doesn't ring true. I'm like, I don't get the tax, but it is a fee. It's like a fee it's a transfer fee. It's a fee to get in and get out of the ecosystem. Maybe it's semantics, but I don't know. So anyway, I guess my question is, the thing is that, I mean, I can tell you what we're doing and where I think we're getting some momentum, and also where so I'll focus on where we're getting momentum, but I also think, Giff, this is where it's probably like where we ended last time, where you said, when I asked you, I said, do you want to revive Pulsar? And you're like, hell yeah, of course. It's like, right. And then I was like, and now that I'm hearing Rock talk about GIF and PGIF, that's another technology and another tool. And then you've got Pulsar, and then you've got this idea of Eros and Eros X. And so Eros is a tax fee token, and then Eros X is the transform version of that. Right. And there is a liquidity web that we've set up. The architecture basically is all the build on Titanx tokens now are on Pulse Chain. Not all of them are filled up, right? But they all are there now. And there's a Pulse Chain side of it that mostly this guy, Peter, who's the initiator of this idea that sort of feeds us with ideas, right? And I think that his brain on this is sort of phenomenal in a way. He's got a phenomenal brain. And so his role in this is really to initiate his intelligence about what he calls tokenomics and poolonomics, right? His thing is pool. And at first I was like, what is he talking about? It's like, but the more he talks about it, and then the more I actually hear Giff talk about poolonomics, and the more I learn from other people about like how do you create healthy poolonomics, I think there's a lot here, right? And I think that like one of my questions is like it would be great if we could all plug into Giff's like machine, right? In a way that provided the structure for community web building initiatives, right? That everyone could participate. Everyone could who wants to really. It's like, so that's sort of where I go, is like, what's when I started this, when I thought it was only going to be me and Giff, what I was really going to ask Giff is like, what's the biggest need that you see on Pulse Chain? Like, what's the big, and not just the need, but like the big opportunity, like because on the other side of the need is like the big opportunity. And I suspect it's for the rocks of the world, it's for the eroses of the world, it's for the all of the decentralized like community webs that are, I mean, I was just before listening even to the Atropa people, right? And they're sort of going through a similar sort of questioning. Yeah, and how do they do, and how do they make it? And nobody seems to know. It's in this experimental phase, right? And so I do think it's a good time. But I guess my question to you, Giff, is like, what are you thinking in terms of the real need, the real opportunity, and where do you feel like your tech vision fits in at maybe at the center of what we're talking about?
I think there's a big need for this facilitation of collaboration between actual honest devs who want to build and vibrant communities who are looking for that dev to facilitate what they're trying to achieve. I think there's this synergy that between the two that is very elusive, because I think we run into these issues where we have a community that came together, I would say in spite of the founders, whether it be my communities or it be Titan X or it be Richard Hart communities. I think those communities come together in spite of the leaders. And I think they're very powerful. And I think that they drive all the narratives, and they drive all excitement, and they drive all FOMO, and they drive all fears and concerns. And they have a lot of power. And I see scenarios where these fantastic communities kind of fizzle out because they don't have that dev that's really driving in the right direction. Or vice versa. You got the dev and you got no community, and you're building cool stuff and nobody cares, right? And it's like this constant like kind of seesaw or tug of war that's happening. And that's what I would like to see solved. I think that really needs to be solved. There's a handful of devs on Pulse Chain that I really respect that nobody probably even knows their name or that they even exist. And I want them to be building things that they're passionate about, but I want them supported by real
community. Yeah. And so, yeah, right. Okay. So let me just tell you like where my mind thinks, because I'm like professionally, I'm a mediator facilitator, right? That's sort of what I do. And I think about multi-stakeholder coalitions. Okay. That's how you build alignment in decentralized universe. And it's really around aligned interest. Like in real life, what I've learned is I feed people. Okay. When I have like a room of 30 people with divergent stakes and interests, I just feed them, right? I just like, here, take the food, talk to each other, get to know each other, take off the facade and get to know each other as human beings and see where the natural connections are. So that's one thing you do. You just bring people. Now it's hard in the decentralized realm where there's anonymity and there's like all this uncertainty and there's all this distrust, in trustlessness. And so I don't know what the solution is, but so that's one thing. The other thing is that if there were a technological solution to facilitate that in some way, shape, or form that would connect like the builders, the developers that you're talking about with vibrant communities, and there's got to be like a matchmaking service where, like, for example, like what we need, okay? Like let's think about Eros. We're like an offshoot of Titan X, right? There's probably only 100 people in Titan X left. Okay, there's like literally, I mean, maybe there's 2,000 bag holders or something, but there's like 100 active people. I would say 20 of them now, a fifth of them are now part of this little sub community. People are curious. There's 5 or 6 people actually doing things, and there's an emerging community of 20 to 30 people that own this token, are interested in it, want to bridge over, want to make LP, right? The two things that we need, this is the thing when you asked me the first time we talked, Giff, and you said on a voice call on Telegram, you said, all right, what do you need? Right? What do you need? I was like, oh, to make it easy, right? Just make it easy. A website. And this is where, Peter's idea of like making it easy for, okay. So that's the first thing. And so if you could connect, not you, but a dev, right, who can deliver a killer website that is populated, with the blockchain and helps people to navigate the LP web. And you can say, hey, click this button, bridge, and get
just real quick. I've got a handful of those devs begging me for work right now, and they have been for months.
Exactly.
They're out there. They are there.
I know. The problem is that at this point in the market, everyone feels like they're overextended. Everyone in the altcoin market, like we're all talking about is how do we deploy and redeploy existing capital, right?
Yeah.
And that's where, it could be when if people like exchanges, like, if people can accept like tokens, that's where we can, create some sort of exchange, right? There's maybe a dev, community exchange program, a matchmaking service that's very simple. And then you sort of screen people and introduce them. And maybe there's a decentralized way to pay people, like incentivize people somehow, because devs need to get paid, right? You can't just work for free unless you're an owner of a protocol, right? And it's like, anyway.
That's how I know you're old school Titan X, man, is because you're like, devs need to be paid. And old school Pulsar is do it all, or sorry, not Pulsar. Old school Pulse Chain is like, go do the work, right?
I know,
right?
My thinking. I want to interject my thinking on this real quick, and I want to go back to what I stated earlier. I want to build a system that I can use to achieve my goals personally, because if I can achieve my goals personally, that means other people can as well. And that doesn't necessarily include me being paid in tokens. Now we have team allocations in the tokens that we've launched with the ecosystem, but those are more about controlling the supply, and again keeping it out of the hands of bad actors, because I can use those tokens to deploy into liquidity at some point. So I don't necessarily follow that ethos of, we need to allocate X amount of tokens for devs to actually have income, right? If you can
right here, Rock.
That's fine.
Peter agrees with Rock. Peter agrees with Rock, by the way. Peter is like this is a workhorse culture.
Yeah, because if you're designing something that achieves the goals you want as a user, what are my goals as a user? Then you don't necessarily need to sell your own tokens just to have income, because you are building a system that provides income, right? Yeah. And that's my unabashed philosophy on that, right? I'm not saying that the devs don't deserve.
No, I think you're right.
Honestly, I will pile on top of that a little bit. There are devs that get paid so much money, it makes me sick on what they produce. It makes me absolutely sick. The amount of money that's been extracted, I'll use both communities. From Pulse Chain on devs makes me sick. The money extracted from Titan X on all the devs and the audits and everything makes me sick, honestly. Because if you were to add it all up on both sides of the communities, it's insane amounts of money. And the super cool, innovative shit basically was free.
So,
Was
so
Right.
that brings
Yeah,
me
good.
back. I want to jump in here. That brings me back to a discussion, Giff, you and I had a while back. What is your intention as a developer? What is your intention, right? And being able to judge the intention, or having being able to glean some intention of a developer that you want to support in a token, in an ecosystem, whatever, you have to be able to judge intent. Now, intent goes to a variety, a spectrum of things, but on one side of that spectrum is that developer developing this to get rich? Is it for self gain? Or on the other side of the spectrum is the developer trying to create something that users can interact with in a healthy way and not get wrecked to shit?
Oh, totally.
And there's a whole range in there, but we've seen it. We've been in these communities. We know. We can see it. There are actors we already know that have established reputations that, well, this guy's gonna extract value from everything we put in, and that is obviously that touches a nerve for me, right? What are your intention as a developer? Are you here for users, or are you here for yourself? Right? And if you're here for yourself, then you're not helping really anybody,
Well, but I think that my experience, I would prefer if the developers build the product, because I think that the Titan-X incentive structure didn't work. It incentivized copy and paste. It incentivized like early selling and getting people in because you got up to 8% of whatever you got in. And so the performance-based incentive, like, it was a good idea, but it didn't work. I think the principle of builders need to have performance-based pay makes sense, right? And so I like that. I like who's ever building to get performance-based pay, but how Titan-X did it, maybe not so much, right? And so I think, think about this, though. Think about if we all, because I want a passive income machine too, right? I would love to plug in, right? So I'm not a validator. I left to my own devices, I wouldn't be building an LP web, right? I'm like following other more experienced people. I'm sort of piecing things together. I'm taking a share of my assets from, Ethereum and bridging it over and, and doing this thing, right? But wouldn't it be nice, honestly, if, first of all, that was easy. The process of bridging over and choosing LPs and how we're going to do it. And I think on our side, I think this week we made some real progress in terms of how we're going to concentrate liquidity, how we're going to start this out, really, now that we've sort of built it. And so that's one thing. But I want to go back to like this idea of potentially your vision, Giff, an emerging vision. And it's not a commitment. It's like an emerging vision of like, what would it look like conceivably, hypothetically, if you really could build what you told me after you said to me that one pager, that website is easy, right? But what you said was what's really needed is unifying all of the diverse communities and initiatives on Pulse Chain around something, right? And I guess other than facilitating that sort of exchange, and this is where I'm sort of leading the question, is like, how about a passive income machine? How do we do that? It's like that people like Rock can plug into somehow, and people like me and our community, that communities can plug into, because there's this vibrant liquidity web manager system of sorts that sort of knits together the liquidity web manager, right? And somehow also captures income from keeping the chain safe, which is what validation does. So I'm just wondering if where that leads you, and if you do have a vision for like this cycle, or is it really a more longer term vision? Are you less focused right now and more in a long term vision? So I'm sort of both about intention, but also vision, because I think I know your intention. I've sort of heard you enough so I can sense the intention. I guess the question is like, what do you see?
I mean, what I see is we're walking into a time. Um, Maybe it's this summer. I don't know. I feel like we're already so deep into the year. Maybe it's this year. Maybe it's next year. But we're going to have this renaissance where we're going to have a lot of people being able to launch their own tokens. And maybe these own tokens are representatives of themselves on the blockchain. And it's going to be a deciding factor of which community they want to be involved in. I mean, I see what Rock is doing with his tech. And I'm thinking, wow, okay. So what if I had like 15, 20, 50, 100 rocks launching their tokens, and they're very enthusiastic to support a primary project, but at the same time, they're doing their own thing, right? And you look at these LP webs and you think, okay, well, there's taxes you can set to go and buy and burn, or buy an LP, or all these other things that you could really do, right, with contracts. And I'm thinking, man, we might be in a scenario where instead of a user just walking in and just buying a token, maybe they're launching a token and they're using that launch of that token to buy and burn their favorite tokens, or to buy an LP, their favorite tokens. And we're starting to build an LP web of not just tokens, but of community members.
I on the issue of collaboration,
that's always an issue.
well, one of the things that I think about the most is, as we move forward through this journey in Pulse Chain, and of course, I think the Titan X system is probably an example of this. Is I always think about what are the basic fundamental tools that emerge, and when I say tools, I mean features. Giff PGIF, that was a kind of a feature that was designed and developed and tested out that reached a certain point.
Immediate arbitrage that anybody who knows the basic foundations of crypto can pull off and get immediate profit. Yes.
Yeah. And again, profitable moves, right? But I think about all these different tools. What are they, right? Bot networks, liquidity, webs, liquidity in general as a tool. How do you leverage liquidity? Supply is something I think there hasn't been enough focus on. Actually managed supply. Now, obviously, Hex does it. We all know that. But the Giff PGIF kind of feature that how can that tool be leveraged? Bot networks, liquidity, managed supply. How can all these things work together, and who's good at it? Who's good at this thing? Who's good at that thing? That's where the collaboration. How can you pull these? That guy has a great set of bots that are really supporting the ecosystem, driving volume, creating rewards. So that's where I think the collaboration comes in. And the other thing is, how does a foundational piece of code in a contract get improved upon by the next person to utilize it, right? And so when it comes to collaboration, I think there is there's a hesitance for developers to feel good about somebody else improving on their whatever they wrote, right? So it's a matter of finding all these foundational tools, finding a way to leverage those in a way that will give you some health in charts, give you some health in rewards, and give you some health in liquidity, right? What are those tools? How do they get used? How do they get leveraged? Collaboration will do that.
And Rock, how do you see Giff? Like, what would you like to see if, let's assume that he wants to, like, build something? What would you want from him? As
Well, I mean,
like,
I've
yeah,
always I've always felt that the the system of GIF PGIF, and we've discussed it. I always felt that there's that story is not fully written yet. I do think that there was something there that was valuable that still has iterations to be built on top of it to actually get it to the place where it should go. And I think it all really stems back to what tools are there to actually keep that ratio spread opened up for minting opportunities for profitable moves and people in the ecosystem, because those moves, those profitable moves, support the ecosystem. They burnt GIF, right? They minted PGIF, the whole thing. So no, I'm not sure that that's where he's at, but that's what I'm thinking about is like, what tools are out there that we have, what emerging code that has come out. You know, is it a bot network? Is it some liquidity providing incentive that will help to keep that ratio spread, right?
I like that.
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. I mean,
There's a lot of
how
stuff that has emerged since GIF PGIF has was released that might be that turnkey solution that will help. You know, it doesn't have to stay spread, but it obviously you don't want that P token to dip below the price of the input token. So, you know, but minting and burning is a great feature if it can be used in a way that will keep supply healthy, obviously, and keep your charts healthy. The chart is the headline of the story, always is, always will be. And how you know, how can some of these kind of emerging technologies that we've seen bot networks getting really more sophisticated. When I say bot networks, I don't even think they're networks anymore. I think they're just bots that do a lot of stuff, to be honest. You know, liquidity webs, how do these work? Could these be leveraged in that situation? So, yeah. And how is it on top? The last thing is how to make it as user friendly as possible.
Yes. I was just gonna say on the bots, they're just getting fine tuned. That's it.
Yeah.
And you know, when we're talking about software engineering and we're talking about computer science, things are only getting more efficient. That's the role of this in our lives. So it's just getting more efficient, and they're getting really good. The flash loans have been wild lately. Some of the tech in that, but yeah, I'm not gonna get on that road. But I really appreciate what you said, not only about the GIF PGIF arbitrage and how that story is probably not yet been completed, right? There's still some writing to be done there. But I also appreciate, am I feeling like a whole lot of synergy between you two guys on what you're thinking? Like, because like I have not heard you guys disagree once in the last hour.
I don't think there's anything for us to disagree about, really. I mean,
I love it.
Why do we have to disagree? I think what's cool, I mean, a few things. I like Pulse Chain because because I was, you know, a hex person, and it's not that I lionize Richard Hart at all, but I like facets of Pulse Chain. I mean, I like that it's relatively decentralized. I like that it's probably heading towards, I don't know, a tech optimization or something like that. I think it's going to keep on improving. I don't think it's going to be a dead chain. Um, this whole thing about like the culture of developers and, you know, and communities, it's sort of what happens when you don't have top leadership who's in a command and control situation. They sort of just like, especially Richard, who had to disappear for a few years, he was like, look, I'm out, you know. And when a top leader says I'm out, which is why it also that's why Titanx has struggled too, because it's hard for top leaders to stay consistent, especially when they are the target of so much negativity, you know, and so much projection, and so much like, putting you up on the pedestal and then feeling like a god. And it's just really unhealthy. And these are typically younger men who sort of have this god complex, and then when they disappear, shit hits the fan, right? And that's where we are, is where shit, and that's why I think there are some unifying things. I think technology easier than humans. Like humans like really have a hard time, especially when we don't break bread and we don't talk to each other, and it's really hard. But I do think that technology can be one of the bridges, and in some ways it can sort of Eros. Oh, Titan X on Pulsion. Eros to transform to Eros X. Okay, yeah. This is Peter saying, let's hear. And I was gonna get there. Peter is like the conscience of the conversation, saying, okay, let's talk about this idea of Eros, which is a fee token, a 5%. It's a copy and paste. A little bit different 5% than PTGC, right? That's what it is. And then there's this idea, right, of transforming Eros into Eros X, at least in concept, which is a non-fee based, a non-tax token. And, I don't totally get it yet, like what the value is, but I know that Giff and Peter do, and they started to riff on it. And when the two of them, Rock, when I heard Peter and Giff, not in person, because they've never talked, but through their quirky dialogue, I was like, oh, these guys, and you guys started riffing on all of the liquidity web possibilities and passive income potentials of what could happen when we take a fee token and sort of transform it, both in terms of token economics and the scarcity and the burning, but also the potential arbitrage everywhere. And so I'm sort of curious, just to give Peter his, he's here. And so we got to show him due deference, and so he's asking, what do you think, Giff? What do you think about Eros to transform to Eros X? What do you think about that idea? And how does that connect with this conversation that we're having with Rock? Like,
whoa, you're really making this difficult for me. Okay.
why?
So, because a lot of this is, what's interesting is there's a lot of times that somebody will come out and like for example, if I wanted to launch Eros X, or if I wanted to launch a dozen other tokens, I could do it in a weekend, and I could do some really cool like tax tokenomics to it, and I can pair together some other communities, and I could really do some fascinating things. I could throw up a front end, a Web3 front end. That's not a problem for me. I can do all this stuff, but I haven't touched any of it in months and months, because I know where this leads. Like, if you don't have a sound idea, a sound like direction where you're going, and you don't have a community that understands that direction and can echo that in the hours where you're sleeping, in the weekends where you're away, with the guys that are just super hard to communicate with, right? If you don't have that support, it means nothing. It all means nothing. It is just empty blocks on a chain that nobody cares about, right?
Right.
So I am making it my effort to really understand communities better, and to really try to do my best to facilitate the bringing together of communities of people that I know and I respect, like you two right here, right now, that I want to see talk more, because there's too many synergies floating around here that we can recognize just on this stream alone, that we can say, hey, like, we should just at the very least be talking on a regular basis on what we're working on, what our direction is, what our status is. And I think we're doing that right now. And this has been my mission for at least the end of this year.
Okay, good. I got it. I
have a question.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about transforming Eros into Eros X, what exactly are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, so if you're
Well,
Anybody, it doesn't matter. But I'm just trying to. Are we looking at a GIF P-GIF thing? We're transforming GIF into P-GIF. Is that in that scenario?
why don't you try to capture GIF, just because I think you would do better justice. Why don't you capture, this isn't GIF's idea, right? This is like GIF has a different technology. He's got Pulsar, which is a different technology. This is Peter's idea, right? So this isn't GIF's idea, but maybe GIF, you could take a stab at explaining to Rock in your own words why we would do this and how you would do it conceivably, and what would be the outcome and the benefit potentially of transforming Eros to Eros X.
Well, you're not going to get a straight answer from me, but I'll certainly.
Of course not. Of course not. I mean, at least I can ask the question. I mean, I'll get
I just want to understand the mechanic.
Yeah.
So mechanics speaks towards specifics, but just give me a second to air this out. Okay. Yeah. So if we're looking at transforming, why would we want to transform? There's a couple reasons why. One, we could drum up more interest because whatever contract we're transforming into may have some extra tokenomics or community involvement or whatever you call it, the sauce, right? It has the sauce, and we want to get to the sauce, right? How do we get to the sauce? Well, I mean, this all kind of comes back to, honestly, like something like Zen, where it's like the fair launch idea. Well, who gets the sauce first, right? So, okay, so if we're trying to bring together strings here, okay, we're saying that Eros was fair launched to Titan X holders at one point on Pulse Chain. Okay, so this was I'm so hesitant to give it the first, but it's up there, right? And I think I can speak on that. It's up there for the first attempt to bridge Ethereum, Titan X community ethos over to Pulse Chain. I think I was probably first, but yeah, I had to put that out there. So we're doing that, and then we're thinking, all right, how do we bridge these two communities together? Because we've already established the fact that you could have the greatest devs in the world doing mind-bending technology. And if nobody cares and nobody talks about it, nobody buys it, nobody LPs with it, it doesn't matter. So that's kind of the goal that we're trying to, we're circling, we're walking around this goal, right? And we're trying to figure out where's our entry point. So that's a goal. So we need to make sure that we can kind of identify the communities that would be interested in such a thing, a conversion, so to speak, and what will that give the community, right? And I think, Rock, what you're talking about when you're talking about something that you would invest with, that you're building a tool that you would like, right? That's right down the same line of what we're talking about. We're trying to do the same thing. We want to be in a community that we feel comfortable with, that is not going to be the type of people that the criminals that you're trying to push off, right? With the early supply and all this extra stuff, right? And at the same time, we're also addressing from the dev point of view, we're trying to address and get the best technology out of it. We don't want any part of our contracts or any part of our conversions that's going to hurt the community that we're building for, if that makes sense. And we also need to bring something new to the table. There needs to be something new, something really new that we haven't spoke about on streams before, and we haven't talked about on Twitter before. Some sort of combination of things that we think that can keep enthusiasm up. The people who come in early, we're going to keep them happy. There's just a lot of things. There's a lot of strings, a lot of threads you got to pull to make everything kind of work at the right time in the right way. No straight answer. I didn't promise you one.
Yeah, well, I want to throw a wrinkle into all of this, and I do think that innovation, real next step, next level innovation, will come through a very complex thing, which is what is the next level of swap protocol. That's it. What is the next level? So more innovation on swap protocols. We know we've got PulseX, we've got Pateus, we've got 9mm, 9-inch, and a few others out there.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of there are a lot of things that are limiting about all of them, right? We probably know what those are. So I'm not saying that that's the direction, but I'm saying that that's those you have to think beyond those limitations that current swap protocols are actually are in place, and figuring out how to move beyond those, right? Because again, liquidity and transactions is the key to all of this in a way. So yeah, I just want to throw that out there because you took me to that.
That's interesting. So yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that because right now all of my liquidity web building that I'm doing is on PulseX, which is limited, right? It's got limited capability. I hadn't even thought about it, but it's a good point. I just want to address one thing. Part of it is like, I guess my question to Giff would be, so Rock, you've got some tax tokens as part of your web, right? At least in concept. Is that one or more?
Yeah. I've got a suite of tokens right now. 5 are released out of 6. One of them is a straight up meme, no tax, no rewards. Right, it's a high supply token that will act kind of right now. Pulse is a liquidity web for a liquidity hub token for everything. Everything's LP'd heavily with Pulse right now, but the meme token itself, it's Pulse meme token, is kind of set to be a liquidity hub between these tokens. The other 4 and soon to be 5 tokens are all, as you state, fee/reward burn.
Okay.
LP tokens,
cool.
Right?
All right, good. So Giff, let's imagine, and part of it is I also saw Peter's thing. He says Giff wants to grow the team, right? Which is right. And what I'm thinking is what we should be doing is inviting in all of the different stakeholders and just starting to dialogue first, and just do that because from dialogue there's probably will be a concretization of something, but think about this. And this is where Peter's mind is helpful because he's sort of stepping out of it and looking in and telling people what he thinks. And he's very clear and very assertive, and it's non-negotiable. It's just like, here's what it is, but he's also flexible when he's learning new stuff. And so, what I was going to say is like all the stakeholders, like we should just invite people in and do this dialogue. But the other piece of it, Giff, is like imagine that Rock's like tax tokens, and this goes back to answer Rock's question, like what's the mechanic, right? How might Peter's idea that you're sort of how might that idea of transforming it into a non-tax, how might it help Rock's interest in passive income on his both passive income, but also create stickiness for the holder group? And people don't want to sell, like I want to stick to this and I want to be part of it. And I get now a non-tax token. And what happens? How is it good for passive income and for stickiness?
Well, I mean, the cool part is that in when you design contracts, you can have it do whatever you want, right? Like as long as it's within reason of the Solidity contract or whatever you have, or the front end, right? The JavaScript you're using, as long as it fits and it works within the code, you can have it do whatever you want. And one thing I'll just talk about what I try to do with Pulsar. What I tried to do is when people minted Pulsar, a portion of that Titan X went to Rock earmuffs. It went to Dragon X Vault, and a part of it went to the Helios Treasury. And did those guys owe me? Did they owe me anything? No. Did I owe them anything? No. It was just they were the only two developers in all of Titan X that would at least have a conversation with me.
So it was Helios and who?
Eric
and Baby
Dragon X.
Yep. Okay, so Eric and Dude. Okay.
And Dude.
Yep.
No,
those are the only
Dude seems to be a good developer with good intentions, by the way.
Well,
Oh,
to be
I
clear,
don't,
he's not
I
the
don't
dude
sense
is
an
not
ego.
an engineer. He's not a
Yeah.
software engineer. I think a lot of people assume he is, and I
Yeah.
did when I was talking to him privately, and he's like, "No, I'm not." I was like, "All right. I'm glad I figured that out." But I'm not gonna snowball that because that's a hard thing to like push off, right? So neither one of them are engineers, but I spoke to them. They asked their guys, and I'm like, "Hey, how do I send you Titan X from the minting of Pulsar? Because I want to contribute." And that's what I did. I contributed to both of those teams, right? And both of them said thanks, but nothing really latched on, right? Like nobody really cared. But that doesn't mean that there's no there with that, right? That there's nothing that can be done with that. So if we build a community, I mean, maybe Rock never touches a single bot token again, and that would be fine. But he could still be
Totally.
in our community, and if we build something, then he could still be involved in his token.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Why?
Absolutely.
Because we're here talking right now, and because Rock and I talk on a regular basis, and we get along great. And if I'm going to build something, I'm going to throw homage to him. I'm going to throw homage to anybody else who are reasonable, like-minded people that want to talk on a regular basis, even if they get nothing out of it. If it's
Right.
just to talk and chat and catch up on what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So what would it look like then if we were to commit to a dialogue that had a very specific purpose? Like if we just said like collaboration is sometimes enough, right? Sometimes it's a collaborative thing, or maybe there's something more specific. Like I'll give you an example, Giff, and I'm using you because I sort of sense that we're sort of potentially heading towards something, which is what I'm imagining is, and it's not that you're developing for everybody. It's really that you might represent the body of developers, of engineers who you can like bring to the equation also. Like it's a because I think what would be interesting is like a multi-stakeholder coalition of sorts who are committed to high integrity DeFi, whatever that looks like it's just like high integrity is like the basic. This is like, and maybe there are some basic principles of like, what are we talking about here? And how do we uplift this idea that it's possible on Pulse Chain? It doesn't have to be a scam. It doesn't have to be a this. It doesn't have to be smoke and mirrors. It doesn't have to be dog eat dog. It doesn't have to
Developer
be.
get rich token.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but this is the thing. If we could embrace, right, Rock, if we could embrace the idea that when investors get rich, developers will get rich, right? That's the idea, is that if we can build passive income machines, actually, right, that are smart machines in some way, and everyone can benefit, everyone's going to want to be part of that, right? And that's where, Giff, maybe we do put not you at the center, but because you're sort of calling out for the collaboration. It was really the first time I talked to you. This is when I asked you what's needed, you were like, oh, we need to knit together all these diverse communities. What you didn't say was we need to knit together the diverse high integrity communities. And that's where we're going to have to be selective about who you guys want to invite and who we want to invite, so that we sort of merge these efforts, which is this combination of, because what Titan X has happened is Titan X has splintered, right? It's splintered because there's no centralized leadership. Hold on. The community liquidity pool V2 ethos creation is an engine we don't have on ETH. Okay. So this is Peter's thing. He's saying the community liquidity pool V2 ethos creation is an engine we don't have on ETH. I think we would agree with that, right?
Oh,
He's
yeah,
basically
V3 on ETH. Like everything's V3 paired with Titan X, 1%, fees, right? That's the Titan X ethos.
Right. And so what he's saying is, let's not forget to focus on this V2 ethos of creation, right? And that's like one of those tools that you were talking about. Like, Rock, you were like, what are the tools? Okay, well, maybe that's what we need to do, and then assemble all the tools in one platform, right, where people can plug in somehow. Because I do think, Giff, that Peter's original idea, like, it went off in my head when I think you and he were going back and forth about Eros to Eros X. And then I heard one of his audio said, oh, it doesn't have to be just Eros. It's any tax token. How many tax tokens are there on? And I'm like, oh, I was like, yes. And so like the tax token transformation process that gets added to the suite of tools, could be really good if you could convince someone like Rock, right, that transforming a tax into a non-tax token is a good idea. I don't get it, but because you and Peter think it's a good idea, I think, all right, it probably is.
Well, if we're talking about using an input to mint a new token, then I think that is a tool that certainly cannot be overlooked, because now you have control over tokens coming into your system as a developer through kind of 2-3 means, right? But is liquidity, it's collecting input through tax, or collecting input through minting, and then how do you use those in what ways, right?
Right.
So
right.
if you're talking about using a token as an input to mint another token, great. What are the tokenomics of the token? How does that token get supported? What is the supply of that token? How does that supply get managed? How does it keep from out of control? Right? All of those things come into question.
Well, let me give you an example of Eros, okay? How it might work. So you put it in, I don't know how it gets transformed, but the original idea, and I don't know, Giff, how you've thought about it, was a third of it goes to burn Eros, right? And then another third of it goes into building liquidity, I think. And then another third of it goes into burning the Eros X. And so you've got a cap supply Eros, which is, a deflationary cap supply Eros, that then goes into this transformation machine and burns more. And so it's good for scarcity of the tax token, right? I still don't know, like, what do I get when I get Eros X? I get a non-tax token. Like, why would I do that? Right? Why would I do that? Now, when I heard Peter and Giff talking about it, I started to get it, but I didn't really get it. So that sort of was the original idea, of that you sort of turn this tax token into a non-tax token and use it to burn it, to build liquidity, to build scarcity. And then what you have is a non-tax token that can fly, is light, and that you can put in LP web, you can create arbitrage opportunities, you can go back and forth between, right? There's all kinds of things that I had never thought of, that when I heard Peter talking about, I was like, oh, it's an interesting concept.
Well, yeah. Another thing about transforming a tax token into a non-LP token, and Giff, correct me if I'm wrong, but now your non-tax token can be put into V3 single-sided liquidity, whereas I don't think currently a tax token can be put in single-sided. Is that
no?
Right?
You can't. The issue with tax tokens on Pulse Chain specifically, if I may, is
I know 9mm. I don't think it allows tax tokens in single-sided. Correct?
It's Pateus for me. It's Pateus. Aggregators are so crucial, and they're so underspoken about, and obviously that I went deep on Pateus, right? And they're, Danny's trying to come up with, that's the dev founder from Pateus. He's trying to come up with a V2 of Pateus, which will allow for tax tokens to function better. But the problem is that tax tokens excel, or they only live on single transactions from one to the other. as opposed to aggregated transactions. That's the real issue. So like V3 were great on non-tax tokens because of aggregators really drive the volume, and they self-balance out when you don't have bots doing that. So that's really what it is for me. I hope that answered that question.
No, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, but yeah, no, but Pateus is great.
Or DeFi Llama, if you will, on Ethereum. I love DeFi Llama as a aggregator on Ethereum. It's just great.
There would be a lot of dead tokens out there, I think, without the Pateus aggregator.
Yeah.
I mean, the way because it really does a good job of moving through pools.
Oh, and it works so good. They built white paper around basically how PGIF integrated it. Like literally what we did. Like you go look at they built. So I'm not gonna get too techy, but there's like there's a way that you can allow other developers to build easier on your software. And they didn't have this built when I was building PGIF, right? But now they do. And it just looks fantastic. I'm sorry. It's great. That's a side notion, and we're probably getting at the hour and 20.
We nerded out for a second, but
yeah, but that's good. It sort of always stretches my mind. Can I pick your brain a little bit, Giff, about Pulsar, just so that I understand, like, how you see it right now? Because that was like when I was really excited by that. Okay, at the time, mostly because I was like, oh. I mean, what I was thinking was, oh, it's my way to get back to Pulse Chain, right? That's what I thought. I was like, okay, I was like mining Titan X. I was like saving it for Pulsar. It was like one of my things that I was like, right on, I want to do this, right? And I remember saying, look, I can't tell you what is going to be on the other side, but we are building in support so that there's like a reason to do Pulsar, to do this transformation.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess my question is like, what were you thinking back then? Like hypothetically, and like how has your thinking shifted, and like is there any wake up or any like aha, or anything around Pulsar based on all the water under the bridge and everything where it's gone, and like what do you think about it? I'm just curious.
All right, I'm gonna comprise this down in like 3 or 4 minutes because
all right, cool. All right, cool.
So,
and then we can reschedule and start to build the dialogue. I think we should grow the dialogue.
I just need to block my camera for a sec. I'll be back.
All right, man. All good.
You're good. And yeah, and I would like to do this again next week.
Yeah.
And I've got another individual from a different community that I'd like to bring in as well. And I would love it if Rock came back again too. I love having Rock around.
Well, Rock, we need Rock, and I think we need Rock, and I think we can also add Rich. Rich is a really good dialogue here, and I also think Allie, who's sort of starting to talk, and think about this, is a good person. But anyway, go for it.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So when building Pulsar, we were basically connecting a lot of experiments and what we learned with the tokens on Pulse Chain to bring over to Pulsar. And we tried to dive into some new tech that had never been a road that's never been traveled before. Now, we did all that successfully. We did it all successfully. The only problem is that in crypto, you have to be very careful about who you partner with. That's all I'm going to say. Is I had partners who decided to move in one direction. I had partners who promised one thing and then failed to deliver. I had partners who basically treated me like their employee when they had no business doing such a thing, right? So there was a lot of issues with what the vision was. So what I was speaking about at the time was basically like a new financial system of smart contracts that we would use on Pulse Chain that would be very similar to what you see with Liquidity or what you see with Power City or what you see with all these other big platforms that did nothing but delivered some tech, right? And that's where I was always butting heads with these other guys in behind the scenes, right? So the idea is that we build up a good community from Titan X and Pulse Chain. We bring them together. We come over to Pulse Chain. We have some good adoption. We're bringing in some funds so we can start building the next phase of what we want to do. And whatever we build, Pulsar will be involved in it. Will be the core function, right? Because these are our angel founders, or is it angel founders? Is that what it's called? Angel investors. These are the people at the ground level that are making all this possible. So when the whole team fell apart based on one individual, really, or two, I mean, who knows? But the whole point of the matter is that the vision had to change. And I was not gonna be a part of this, whatever thing that they were trying to do. I was not gonna be a part of it anymore. So now I am trying to build something that we've not seen before. I'm trying to bring a community and have a community get built that is not led by me, but is assisted by me. I want to help the community build. I'm not the guy to look towards on everything, but I will be the guy in the room putting in my 2 cents, and hopefully we can come up with something that is really cool that the community can get behind. And also I can do something innovative yet again.
Great. And I think that what that means, and then Rock, it's all on you. What that means to me is merging communities and integrating ideas and people and starting there, because and that might be enough, right? It might be enough to just, and so that's probably what we want to think about next, is how do we grow this team of collaborative thinking to start. Yeah. Rock, what do you think?
Well, I want to start by talking about something that is sorely missing in the crypto development community, at least on Pulse Chain. And it seems to be also on Ethereum as well, but don't know about Solana. I can't focus on Solana too much, but proper producers in development are sorely missing, and UX, user-focused design, is sorely missing in crypto. Now, I'm saying this as a 25-year developer of video games, right? Without those two things, it's impossible. Now, it works here because you release code, people interact with it, it's all fine. But, a producer is there to rein in design, rein it in, because the producer's thinking about users, right? He's thinking about how, if we cannot support users, we cannot attract users, right? And of course, in crypto, not supporting users means you just go on a stairway down, right? So a producer making sure that the messaging supports attracting users and that the design supports supporting users, if you will, right? Then the other one is UX. Make everything as smooth as simple. Don't make me switch over to this thing to do that and blah, 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 blah. Finding a way developing these smart contracts in a way that a user doesn't have to launch another site to do X, Y, or Z, right?
Yes.
Those two things.
All right. So wait, those two things, what you said was user centricity and user experience, basically, right? And so, right?
Yeah, but the producer's kind of a big thing, because look, I don't know if you guys have heard the term feature creep, but this is something that will happen, right? A developer will design and develop something as more of a code mentality, right? And this is where he operates. This is his place, but there's no outside brain making the observations of what's actually happening within the ecosystem to go, right? Sometimes a developer will move from one contract to the next without actually making sure that everything is sewn up tight with the first one through the UX, the code itself, and actually completing the features to iteratively get that place to where it needs to be. So
I have an idea. No, not sorry. That's great. So I have an idea then, because it's like what we need for a new product is a user group as opposed to a community. What we need is diverse users who sort of, this is why I had this image of you, Giff, with you at the center, not just you, but let's say you and a producer. Okay, it might be your AI producer, it may be Rock, maybe someone else, whatever it is, but it's you and maybe a small crew of people, developer, producer types who are sort of interacting with the user group in a dialogue because I think we're all users. I mean, I think we all want the same thing. I mean, Giff, even though you're a developer, you would want to develop it for yourself too, right? You'd want to use your dashboard and your platform and your control mechanisms, right? Right? I mean, and so I guess the question is, maybe, and let's think about this, this dialogue might be in the context of a user group. That actually, and that might be the intention, collaborate as users of decentralized protocols, and then do what Rock's idea is. Look, we need producer to make sure that the punch list is done. We need this, we need that. I would say, great, go do that. I need it for my dyslexic mind so that it's not, I need it simple, right? And so
user focused development, straight up. I mean,
yes.
This is obviously not a very large percentage of developers on blockchain are user focused. I'm sorry, but that just
almost
seems
none.
to be obvious, right? So there's that. But the other thing, what you're talking about a user focused group, one of the things about collaboration, I think step one is matter of fact observations from the perspective of users, whether they be user developers, whatever, but true, honest observations of what you see with X, Y, or Z. What is the effect on yourself? And then, of course, sharing the ideas that those observations produce, right?
Totally.
So
great.
I wanted to say that.
I think we should do it. I think
honest observations.
Totally. And I think what you guys want to do is invite whoever you want, and I'll do the same, and we'll just, keep the dialogue going and make it user centric, because that's as opposed to community, like part of the curse, like I'll give you an example of one of the curses of when I hear people, like when I hear a family business or no, a business saying, oh, we're like a family. I'm like, oh boy. It's like, and so same thing with community. Like community is sort of designed as a sort of oxymoron for DeFi. And I think it's a setup for failure. It's part of because these are not real communities. They're like real communities are more whole, these are very isolated communities. And so maybe if we reframe community into, we're all individual users, and maybe we come in teams. Like maybe we have, like 3 or 4 teams of users who are doing interesting, similar kinds of things, who are building in the liquidity web space on TitanX. And maybe we convene 3, 4, 5 teams in sort of a user group that then Giff for you and your, let's say, dev team, right? Then it becomes not like one community that you rely on, but it's more like this iterative user group that's always there because they know that the builders are building for them, right? You're building for us. And then we're in a dialogue, and then we have, right, as long as we can agree that, whatever you're building or we're building is serving all of the interests of the people. That's why what Rock, you said is right. Step one is just to hear people's reality and to get to know each other, break bread, basically. Even if you can't break bread, you sort of hear the reality, and then you get to, okay, what do we want to build? And by then, and maybe that's how we also, because I want Peter's brain here. I want Peter. And so if we can, and I think, Giff, I think we all want Peter as part of the dialogue, right? His brain here, if he could participate, really listen and dialogue, huge value, not just him, but other people that have real experience, and we can start to integrate around you, Giff. Now, I don't know if you want that centrality for yourself. Maybe you just want to be part of it, which is fine. And if that's, I see it. I got it totally.
I want to help. I want to help all of my crews. I want to help everybody here. So
Beautiful.
I want to just throw a couple of things out here real quick, and then we really need to wrap up because Rock is not even planning on coming on. So number one, did you just come up with this whole user group over community thing? Did that just happen just now? Okay.
I mean, I've been thinking. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I've been talking about it, but I haven't really crystallized it as sort of a replacement for community. Really,
it needs to be. I think, and I think Peter will back us on this. Keep it simple, stupid.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure.
What's going to be going forward? We have a user group. We don't have a community. That's what it's going to be.
One of the things that I would say.
I love that idea.
About that, and again, it kind of goes back to the idea of a producer. But again, as a game developer for as many years as I have, I mean, community is huge, user feedback is huge, but managing user feedback and reacting to only the things that are important, that actually are true, because users will come with all kinds of information, but their observations are important. Always, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there as a, a fail-safe kind of thing, right?
Love it.
And on that note, let's keep it simple. Stupid is right on, because it's the only way to make it happen.
I have a variation of that I use for myself, and that is keep it simple first.
Right on.
That's how you step by step get to where you want to go. Keep it simple first.
Right. All right, guys. Sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Rock,
totally.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, Rock, it was great to meet you, man. It was a pleasure.
If it helps, great. My observations and my ideas and thoughts are what they are. They're unabashed and hopefully helpful.
Hopefully we'll pull you on again.
Sounds good.
All right. There it is, Chiz. He guaranteed it.
Have a good evening.
All right. See it.
Peace out.